Absolutely. Here's an expanded version of scene 1 to roughly 1,000 words. Dash dash dash. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft metallic sigh, enclosing Clara in the small, mirrored space. Her fingers were still clenching the thick cream-colored envelope like a lifeline, her knuckles pale from the tension. She took a shaky breath, forcing herself to calm down. The subway ride there had been a blur of anxiety and indecision. She had spotted the envelope lying abandoned on the train seat, its contents, judging by the thickness, obviously important. She had hesitated. People left wallets, phones, and packages behind all the time, but this was different. Something about the seal, stamped with a corporate insignia, screamed, valuable. And yet, her heart had been heavy with guilt ever since she'd picked it up. I can't just keep it, she murmured to herself, voice barely audible over the faint hum of the elevator. Someone will need this. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirrored walls. The woman who looked back was nervous, hair slightly mussed from the wind outside, eyes darting to the edges of the envelope as though afraid it might jump away if she didn't hold it tightly. Clara inhaled deeply, trying to force her nerves to settle. The elevator stopped on the 42nd floor, a soft chime announcing her arrival. The doors opened to a pristine hallway that stretched like a runway of marble and glass, walls adorned with abstract artwork and muted gold accents. The scent of polished wood and subtle cologne, or was it expensive air freshener, filled the space. Clara stepped out cautiously, heels clicking softly against the gleaming floor. She kept her gaze low, afraid of drawing attention, but even from this distance, she could see him, the man behind the door of the penthouse office, moving with a rhythm of precision and control that made the world feel heavier around him. He was pacing slowly, but every step seemed deliberate, purposeful, as if the floor itself were an extension of his will. His suit was impeccable, perfectly tailored, the kind that whispered of power without demanding it. His hair was slightly tousled in a way that suggested he didn't care to seem perfect, though his every movement screamed otherwise. Clara's stomach twisted with nervous energy. This was the moment. She had to hand over the envelope and leave, simple as that. But as she drew closer, the enormity of the situation hit her. She was stepping into the lair of a billionaire, someone whose presence seemed to bend the air in the room. Can I help you? The voice stopped her in her tracks. Clara looked up, startled, and met a gaze that was both piercing and oddly amused. The millionaire stood framed by the floor-to-ceiling windows, sunlight cascading over him in a halo of authority. His eyes, sharp and discerning, took in every detail, her disheveled hair, the pale tension of her knuckles, the envelope she clutched like a treasure. I found this envelope, Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. I think it belongs to someone here. She extended it toward him, hands trembling. The man raised an eyebrow, a slow, amused smile curling at the edge of his lips. You're serious. His voice carried a mixture of disbelief and amusement. You actually brought it yourself. Yes, Clara replied, a tremor of unease threading through her tone. I didn't open it. I thought someone might need it. He chuckled, a rich, deep sound that filled the room and seemed to bounce off the walls. Admirable, he said, leaning back in his chair. Most people would have ignored it. Some might even have tried to see what was inside. You actually did the right thing. Clara shifted, unsure whether she was being praised or mocked. The office was enormous, more like a gallery than a workspace. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a dizzying view of the city far below. Skyscrapers glimmered like jewels, and the faint hum of traffic from the streets seemed distant, irrelevant. Every inch of the room spoke of wealth, precision, and control. She felt small, insignificant, a mere intruder clutching an envelope. You must realize, he said, his voice softer now, yet still carrying authority, that integrity is a rare commodity. Most people, they see an opportunity and forget everything else. But you, he waved a hand in a casual, almost theatrical gesture toward the envelope, you chose honesty. Fascinating. Clara felt her face heat up, unsure of how to respond. She had not come here for accolades. She had come here to do what she thought was right, and now she felt like she was under a microscope. I just thought it was the right thing, she muttered. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the edge of the glass desk. And that's exactly why I find this interesting. Most people talk about honesty, but few act on it. Few would carry an envelope for miles through the city, risking all manner of trouble just to return it. You, he said, pausing for effect, are unusual. Rare. And that makes me curious. Clara swallowed hard. I didn't do it for curiosity, she said softly. I just didn't want to see someone lose something important. He leaned back again, eyes twinkling with amusement. Yes, yes, of course. Noble intentions. I'm not mocking you, though it might seem that way. I genuinely admire it. It's refreshing. The soft click of the office door opening drew both their attention. Clara's stomach dropped. A woman appeared in the doorway, tall, composed, exuding a quiet authority that instantly demanded respect. She walked with a calm precision, her gaze fixed on the envelope. Every step made Clara's heart beat faster. Is that mine? The woman asked, voice smooth but firm, eyes flicking briefly to Clara before settling on the envelope. The millionaire's expression shifted slightly, a spark of anticipation in his eyes. Ah, he said, a playful smirk forming, the plot thickens. Clara felt frozen, caught between relief that the envelope had found its rightful owner and panic at having intruded into something far more complex than she had anticipated. The woman stepped closer, her heels clicking against the floor in measured rhythm, each step echoing in the vast space of the office. Clara's fingers tightened on the envelope, almost as if holding it too firmly might undo the moment entirely. The woman's eyes softened as they met Clara's. Thank you, she said quietly, almost kindly. Not everyone would have returned this. Clara's throat felt dry. I just thought it was the right thing, she repeated, a weak echo of her earlier words. The billionaire's chuckle broke the tension, filling the room with warmth and amusement. See, sometimes the smallest act, an envelope returned, a decision made out of honesty, can reveal more than a lifetime of talk. It's extraordinary. Clara exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. The envelope had found its owner. She had done the right thing. And yet, as she glanced between the two of them, she realized she had just stepped into something far larger than she had ever imagined. This expanded version gives more internal thought, tension, and sensory detail to bring the scene to life and hit roughly 1,000 words. If you want, I can also expand scene 2 in a similar style to 1,000 words, keeping the suspense and drama intact. Do you want me to do that next? Absolutely. Here's an expanded version of scene 2 to roughly 1,000 words, keeping the tension, character depth, and cinematic detail. The woman's heels clicked against the polished marble floor as she approached, her presence commanding yet calm, like someone who had learned long ago that authority didn't need to shout, it simply needed to exist. Clara's hands tightened reflexively around the envelope, suddenly aware of how small she felt in the cavernous office. The billionaire remained at his desk, leaning casually with a slight smirk, as if he had been expecting some kind of drama all along and was quietly enjoying the show. Is that mine? The woman asked again, her eyes now fixed squarely on Clara, softening slightly as she noted the nervous grip on the envelope. Yes, Clara said, voice barely above a whisper. I found it, on the subway this morning. I didn't open it. I just thought someone should get it back. The woman nodded, stepping closer until she was within a few feet. She extended a hand gracefully, her fingers brushing the envelope lightly as if testing its weight. Thank you, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Not everyone would have returned this. Most people, she shook her head faintly. Most people would have thought, it's just an envelope. Someone else will deal with it. Clara's stomach tightened, a mix of relief and anxiety swirling inside her. I thought it was important, she repeated, almost defensively, unsure whether her simple honesty would be enough to satisfy this formidable woman. The billionaire finally rose from his chair, walking over toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. He paused, letting his reflection merge with the sprawling cityscape behind him. His back was to Clara and the woman for a moment, as if he were contemplating the enormity of what had just happened. Then he turned slowly, eyes glinting with amusement. You see, he said, voice smooth and deliberate, it's rare to find someone who acts like you just did. Most people would have pocketed the envelope, ignored it, or worse, opened it out of curiosity. But you, he paused, letting the words linger in the space between them. You acted with integrity. And that is something worth noticing. Clara blinked, uncertain whether he was serious or still teasing. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she tried to measure the weight of his words. Integrity. Worth noticing. She had simply done what felt right, never expecting anyone in this tower of glass and steel to care. The woman smiled faintly at Clara, a warmth that contrasted sharply with the authority she radiated. You've done something few would do, she said, holding the envelope securely. And for that, I want to offer you an opportunity. A chance to work with me. Clara froze. Her mind reeled. She had walked into this office expecting nothing more than a polite thank you, maybe a handover of the envelope, and yet here she was being offered a job. A real opportunity. She felt like the floor beneath her had shifted slightly, tilting her world in a way she hadn't anticipated. The billionaire chuckled again, the rich sound filling the office like music. "See," he said, gesturing at Clara with a flourish of his hand. "I told you it would be interesting." An envelope returned, a display of honesty, and suddenly, lives change. Sometimes the smallest acts reveal the most. Clara's gaze flicked between the two of them. The woman exuded calm authority, the billionaire radiated power and amusement, and somewhere in the middle of it all was her, a young woman who had simply chosen to do what she thought was right. And now, because of that choice, she was being thrust into a world of wealth, influence, and possibility she had never imagined. "Work with you," she repeated, the words feeling strange on her tongue. I don't understand." "I'm not. You don't need to understand it yet," the woman interrupted gently. "I can explain everything, but first, you need to know this. Your decision today shows me the kind of person you are. Honest, dependable, courageous in a subtle way. Those qualities, they matter far more than experience or a resume." Clara's cheeks flushed. She had never considered her small acts of honesty to be remarkable. She had simply acted on instinct, doing what she thought was right. And yet, in this room filled with people who could reshape industries with a single decision, her instinct had stood out. The billionaire crossed the room, stopping beside the woman. His smile was broader now, and his eyes twinkled with mischief. "And let me assure you," he said, leaning slightly toward Clara, "this isn't some game. Opportunities like this don't come knocking every day, and when they do, well, you either take them or you walk away. Integrity, it seems, sometimes has its own reward." Clara's heart pounded. She swallowed hard, feeling a rush of disbelief mixed with excitement. Her life had shifted in a single moment, all because of an envelope she had picked up on the subway that morning. The woman extended her hand again, this time in a gesture that clearly indicated partnership, not just a casual thanks. "Shall we begin?" she asked. Clara hesitated, the enormity of the moment washing over her. She could still feel the weight of the envelope, as though it carried not only the documents inside but the potential of the life she might step into. She glanced at the billionaire, who nodded encouragingly, his expression still laced with that mischievous amusement. Taking a deep breath, Clara reached out and took the woman's hand. The warmth and firmness of the handshake grounded her, and in that instant, the fear began to dissolve. She had stepped into something bigger than herself, something she hadn't anticipated, but she felt a spark of courage ignite within her. The billionaire laughed softly, shaking his head in approval. "Remarkable," he said. "From an envelope to opportunity. Sometimes, the world surprises even the most prepared of us." Clara looked down at the envelope once more, realizing it had served as more than just a carrier of documents. It had been the catalyst, the spark, the key that opened a door she never even knew existed. And now, holding nothing more than her integrity, she was stepping into a world filled with possibilities, challenges, and unexpected turns. The woman guided her toward the office's inner corridor, sleek and modern, lined with glass panels that reflected the city lights like 1,000 stars. "We'll explain everything," she said softly. "But first, you need to see the bigger picture. And you'll see why your honesty today mattered more than you can imagine." Clara nodded, her heart still racing, a mix of anticipation and nervous energy filling her chest. She followed, envelope safely tucked under her arm, ready to take the first steps into a future she hadn't imagined, all because she had chosen to do the right thing. As the doors to the inner office closed behind them, the billionaire leaned back against the windowsill, watching the city below with a satisfied smirk. Sometimes, he murmured to himself, all it takes is a single honest act to shake up the world. And for Clara, the envelope had delivered more than papers, it had delivered a future she never expected, a chance to prove herself, and the realization that sometimes, doing the right thing was enough to change everything. This version is fully expanded with internal thoughts, cinematic details, and pacing to reach approximately 1,000 words, giving the scene depth and emotional weight. If you want, I can also create highly detailed cinematic image prompts for both scenes next, so you could visualize this story like a movie storyboard. Do you want me to do that?